If you've been following the news today, you probably have heard a lot about the Justice Department investigation into Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz over potential sex trafficking tied to an alleged sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl, which Gaetz denies. There have been a lot of crazy developments in this story since we first reported on it last night, and we're going to bring you all of them. But first, we thought it would be worth reminding you who Matt Gaetz was before he was under investigation in a child sex trafficking case. Because this guy is really something. Gaetz is the son of wealthy former Florida Senate President Don Gaetz, whose connections and deep pockets helped his son get elected to the Florida House and eventually to the United States Congress. In 2008, Matt Gaetz was arrested on suspicion of drunk driving while driving his dad's BMW. The charges were eventually dropped, but the incident reinforced his local reputation as an entitled ne'er-do-well, as one local paper described him. Gaetz quickly became a controversial figure in the Florida House, mocking food stamp recipients and facing accusations of racism for questioning the intelligence of two black lawmakers. And then he came to Washington and quickly became known as one of Donald Trump's staunchest defenders, with Gaetz gleefully trolling the former president's critics and defending Trump's most odious comments, including on this very show after Trump denigrated the entire country of Haiti. As a U.S. Congressman, Gaetz brought an accused Holocaust denier to the State of the Union, suggested George Soros was paying Honduran kids to storm the U.S. border, and hired an ex-White House aide ousted for white nationalist ties. When the father of a child murdered in the Parkland school shooting called Gaetz a liar for having the gall to tie immigration to those school shootings, Gaetz responded by demanding the father be removed from the hearing and going back to his talking points. Gaetz wore a gas mask on the House floor last March to mock COVID concerns and partied maskless with members of the New York Young Republican Club in December, near the height of the pandemic. I could go on. There's plenty more. But let's end with this. In 2017, Gaetz was the lone no vote on an anti-human trafficking bill, which brings us to the federal sex trafficking investigation into Matt Gaetz. The congressman says the allegations are invented, and he suggests they're tied to an extortion scheme, which is now being investigated. But it's important to note that these are two separate investigations. They're not necessarily even connected, even if Gaetz wants you to think they are. Last night, the congressman went on Fox News to give his side of the story, an interview you likely didn't see because you were quite rightly watching All In at the time. Gaetz, no doubt, expected friendly treatment from that network. That's what Fox News gives almost all Republicans. And he might have gotten it had he not attempted to throw the host of the show he was on and the host's wife under the bus.
I'm not the only person on screen right now who's been falsely accused of a terrible sex act. You were accused of something that you did not do, and so you know what this feels like. I can say that actually you and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine. You'll remember her. And she was actually threatened by the FBI. I really saw this as a deeply troubling challenge for my family on March 16th when people were, talking about a minor and that there were pictures of me with child prostitutes.
I may have watched that clip a dozen times since last night. It went so well for him. I mean, if you're a Republican and you can't get Tucker Carlson on your side, you probably have a problem on your hands.
If you just saw our Matt Gaetz interview, that was one of the weirdest interviews I've ever conducted. I don't think that clarified much, but it certainly showed this is a deeply interesting story, and we'll be following it. Don't quite understand it.
Well, he may not have won over Tucker, but you know who is defending Matt Gaetz today? None other than Republican Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, who used to be a wrestling coach at Ohio State and who former wrestlers say turned a blind eye to rampant sexual abuse by a team doctor who was molesting athletes, which Jordan denies. So at least Gaetz has that going for him. Last night, Democratic Representative Ted Lieu called for Gaetz to be removed from the House Judiciary Committee until the investigation is complete, seeing as he's facing a Justice Department investigation. NBC News asked the House Republican leader, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, about that today.
If a member of my conference gets indicted, they'll get removed from a committee. He says this is not true, and we have a newspaper report that says something else.
I'm pretty sure if it turns out to be the case that Matt Gaetz is a child sex trafficker, you'll want to do more than just take him off the Judiciary Committee. Anyway, before we get to our guests tonight, there's a couple other things you need to know about this story. First, in that interview last night, Gates claimed that a former Justice Department attorney named David McGee, who's long been in private practice, was behind the alleged extortion plot. McGee's law firm called the claim false and defamatory, and McGee denied it to the Daily Beast, speculating, quote, "This is a blatant attempt to distract from the fact that Matt Gaetz is apparently about to be indicted for sex trafficking underage girls." We do not know if that is in fact the case. The other name you need to know is Joel Greenberg, the former Seminole County, Florida tax collector, who posted this selfie with Gaetz and another man in front of the White House back in 2019. As Rachel Maddow deftly laid out last night, Greenberg is a character almost beyond belief. He was indicted on charges tied to his alleged harassment and stalking of a political opponent, and allegedly used his position as the Seminole County tax collector to obtain surrendered driver's licenses and use them to create fake IDs for himself. He was also charged with sex trafficking of a child between the ages of 14 and 18, and alleged in an indictment to have misused the state motor vehicle database to obtain information related to individuals with whom he, quote, was engaged in sugar daddy relationships. He has pleaded not guilty. Just today, federal prosecutors filed a third superseding indictment against Greenberg, which involved stealing money from the tax collector's office to buy cryptocurrency. The investigation into Matt Gaetz reportedly stemmed from the probe into Greenberg, and now both men are facing investigations into sex trafficking involving a child. Back in 2017, Greenberg posted this selfie with Gaetz and Trump ally Roger Stone. And I can't help but wonder what the reaction would be if, I don't know, AOC or Ilhan Omar were in a picture with a guy charged with sex trafficking of a child. QAnon would go crazy. Fox News would have a field day. And yet nobody seemed to care when Matt Gaetz did exactly that. At least not until now.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.